right, moving on from the WTO to an area that we touched on some of these things yesterday, but binding it together in a session. Imagine a world where the balance of power hinges not on military might alone, but on the mastery of cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced materials. Welcome to the forefront of the global stage, where nations vie for dominance in a high-stakes game of innovation and influence. So we're looking at critical and emerging technologies and securing our future. In this dynamic landscape, the lines of geopolitics and technology blur, giving rise to a new era of competition and collaboration. Major powers invest heavily in research and development, while strategic alliances like the Quad emerge as strong walls against emerging threats. But amidst the race for supremacy, questions abound. How do these developments impact Asia? Beyond the borders of India, what geopolitical dynamics shape the pursuit of critical technologies? And how do states safeguard essential resources in an age of resource nationalism? To shed light on these pressing issues, we have assembled a distinguished panel of experts, each bringing unique insights to the table. So I'd first like to welcome up our chair for this session, Dr. Samir Patil. Can we welcome Dr. Samir Patil onto the stage? Big round of applause. Senior Fellow, Center for Security, Strategy and Technology, Deputy Director of ORF, the Observer Research Foundation in Mumbai, a trailblazer in technology and national security. And he's going to guide our discussion as we navigate the complex intersections of security and strategy. With his extensive experience as the India Commissioner for the Global Tech Security Commission and scholarly contributions in cybersecurity, Dr. Patil is uniquely positioned to offer strategic insights into the evolving landscape of critical technologies. Joining him is Rachel Rizzo, Senior Fellow, Europe Center of the Atlantic Council. Can we welcome her, please? Big round of applause. A seasoned analyst in European security and NATO affairs, offering a transatlantic perspective on the global tech landscape. Having directed programs at the Truman Center for National Policy and co-authored reports at the Center for New American Security, Rachel brings a wealth of experience in transatlantic relations and European security matters to our panel. Now from Japan, we have Toshiko Kurihara, New Delhi representative, Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Can we please welcome Toshiko onto the stage? He's a veteran in international finance, providing valuable insights into Japan's role in shaping the future of critical technologies. With over a decade of experience at the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, Toshiko has spearheaded projects in project financing for mineral resources sectors and corporate finances for steel manufacturing, offering a unique perspective on the financial dimensions of critical technology development. And last but not least, we have Shweta Rao Bantwal, Director of the National Security Council Secretariat. Shweta, can I welcome you to the stage? Big round of applause. She's a driving force in India's economic and technological security initiatives, bridging the gap between policy and practice. With her role as Director in the National Security Council Secretariat and her involvement in initiatives like the India-US initiative on critical and emerging technologies, Shweta brings first-hand knowledge of India's efforts to navigate the complexities of the global tech landscape. So together, they're going to unravel the most complexities of critical and emerging technologies, hopefully charting a course for the Asia Economic Dialogues to a more secure and prosperous future. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, and thank you to the Pune International Center and Ambassador Bombawale for giving the opportunity to the Observer Research Foundation to put together this panel looking at critical and emerging technologies. If you look at the world today, I think emerging technologies have added another layer of fragmentation and contestation in the global political landscape. Besides shaping the geopolitical dynamics, they are also transforming the commonly held notions of power, going beyond the military concept of power, and focus really on the state's ability to control the data and information flows to achieve the technology breakthrough and really add to the state's geopolitical and geoeconomic influence. So I wanted to set the context for the panel today, but I think my job was done easy by Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, who in his opening remarks yesterday spoke about the three phenomenon: the supply chain challenge, the technology challenge, and the challenge of over-concentrations stemming from the nature of globalization. And he said that all these three phenomena basically have come together when we consider the evolution of the critical and emerging technologies. In fact, I want to quote him. He said, "We all know that this is indeed the era of artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, chips, green and clean technologies. What we are confronting is no longer a matter of comparative economic advantage, if it was ever that. We're actually talking about the future of the global order." So let me first point out three broad trends when you look at the critical and emerging technologies, and something which were also mentioned during the introductory remarks. The first trend is the rush for increased investment in R&D. If you look at the statistics from the UNESCO, it says that the global spending on the R&D has gone to the highest levels of almost $1.7 trillion. Now, this just does not focus just on the emerging technologies as such, but it also provides us a good starting point to think about how states are approaching the R&D of these technologies. Within that, I think the standard setting for critical technologies has really become a new area of contestation, because it is no longer just a technical exercise. It is now also having critical elements of geopolitical power as well as the commercial or the business interest. The second trend is that as this rivalry between the major powers has really turned up in the technology space, what we're also seeing is resource nationalism and weaponization of the supply chain. And this is mostly seen in the critical minerals space, which are also seen as essential for the development of some of these emerging technologies. China, for instance, dominates the mining of rare earth elements, as well as currently dominates the processing to end-use segments for all the 6 critical minerals, including lithium, titanium, and those kind of things. And many countries today are taking steps to diversify away from China by incentivizing the domestic mining as well as also processing of these resources. Most evident in the form of the semiconductor industry, where the rift between the US and China has contributed to the policies which localize the semiconductor business across the value chains. The third trend is all these dynamics are also shaping the global geopolitical alliances or alignments and cooperation. One noticeable trend is the growth of the minilaterals and the focus within that on the technology. So for instance, the Quad is focusing on the quantum computing, next generation communications, advanced computing, and those kind of things, 6G also. Then we have AUKUS, which focuses on the nuclear submarine and some of the other defense technologies. And we also have I2U2, India, Israel, UAE, and the United States, which focus on the clean and green technology part. So with these 3 trends in mind, how is this geopolitical landscape panning out in this particular space? Can states look beyond the rivalries and think of out-of-box solutions to manage some of these technologies, or will they be always on the catch-up mode? And what drives China's policy in this space? I think I could not have asked for a better panel today, because it combines a policymaker, a practitioner, and someone from the investment community, as well as the think tanker on academia. So Rachel, Shweta, and Kurihara-san, thank you so much for joining us on the panel today. We have 55 minutes, so what I want to do is that give you an opportunity to do a scene-setting remarks for 6 to 7 minutes, and then we will proceed. So Rachel, how do you think is the geopolitical landscape unfolding in this space?
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you to the Pune International Center for hosting me. It's an honor to be here with all of you. It's my first visit to Pune, so thank you for hosting and for having me on this panel to talk about, I think, one of the most geopolitically challenging topics of our time. I think what I'll start with is to give sort of a US perspective on this issue. I think I might be the token American in the room, which doesn't mean I'm going to speak for America, but it does mean I can give sort of a sense of how this is playing out as someone that's based in Washington and who has some insight into what the debate looks like in Washington, D.C. First, I think it's important to note just how focused the United States is on countering China in this space. Okay, that is the geopolitical lens through which the Biden administration views not just its foreign policy, but its domestic policy as well. We are living in one of the most politically polarized times in the United States, probably since the late 1960s. The Democrats and the Republicans have each solidified into various tribes and camps. But if there's one thing, and voters don't vote on foreign policy, okay, that's pretty clear. But if there's one thing that I think unites the Republicans and the Democrats in terms of foreign policy, it's hawkishness toward China. And when you look at Biden's legislation and some of the laws that have been passed over the last few years, I think it highlights that fact. The Inflation Reduction Act is one of them. Obviously, this is one of the most forward-leaning climate policies in the United States for a long time, but it's also meant to better compete with China in this space as well. The CHIPS and Science Act is another one. Build Back Better World is another one. So all of these are about sort of revitalizing the US manufacturing sector, of course, but the thing that we don't say out loud is that it's not just about sort of delinking or de-risking or decoupling the United States from China. It's also about making sure that China is a few years behind in terms of development when it comes to things like critical and emerging technologies and when it comes to things like critical raw materials. Looking at the export controls, for example, that the Biden administration put in place in October of 2023 on things like microchips. And you had NVIDIA, which is a company with a market cap of $1.94 trillion, sort of bear the brunt of those export restrictions in the United States in the name of national security. And then you also sort of see, so the legislation is one piece, what's happening domestically is one piece, but you also see, in terms of foreign policy, a greater focus on building more meaningful relationships with the global South. You also see a revitalization of so-called mini-laterals like the Quad. I'm talking to a group of people here who are mostly based in Asia, who focus on Asia, and most people in this room probably know who Kurt Campbell is, who was the Indo-Pacific coordinator at the White House and is now the Deputy Secretary of State. When you're President Biden and you put someone like Kurt Campbell at the White House to coordinate Indo-Pacific policy, you know that he is taking this very seriously. So you saw the revitalization of the Quad under Biden and under Kurt. You saw AUKUS under Kurt Campbell's leadership. And you've seen these issues that have been sort of elevated during the last few years. And so I think that's sort of a good overview of how the United States is thinking about global supply chains, both in terms of what we're doing domestically and overseas. So I'll pass it on to my fellow panelists, and happy to sort of expand on some of these points in the Q&A session.
Thank you so much. I think I'll come back to some of those points during the interaction. Ms. Shweta Rao-Bantwal, your perspective?
Talking about critical and emerging technologies, what we are seeing now is that these critical and emerging technologies have actually come out as a strong instrument for both national power as well as national security. So an essential distinguishing element of all these critical and emerging technologies is that they have huge capabilities for dual use. On one side, you can harness these technologies to improve your economic productivity, economic efficiency, and provide a big boost to your economy. But at the same time, these technologies also can be harnessed for a huge boost to your strategic capabilities, both for offensive as well as defensive. So it is in this perspective that we have to see why countries around the world are trying to gear up their capacities in these critical and emerging technologies. And this strategic competition, which Rachel referred to between US and China on the technology front, comes from this background. What we actually find is that US is trying to engage with Asia, but we also see China has actually been engaging with a lot of countries on getting resources for these critical and emerging technologies, even a decade before. So China has been hugely investing and collaborating with ASEAN countries. We see China's acquisition deals happening in Latin America, Africa, and even that matter in South America. So we should be actually contextualizing this importance of critical and emerging technologies and how countries led by the strategic competition between US and China are actually creating two different polarized worlds of technology. So it is in this context that India sees itself that it can possibly look at bridging its gaps in technology vis-a-vis its neighbor, not to actually, for strategic reasons alone, but to actually boost its own economy. So collaborations like the India-US initiative on critical and emerging technologies is one such initiative where India is aspiring to actually leapfrog into the next generation of technologies, which gives a big boost to its own economy. The country is able to gain benefits out of these application of technologies on a large scale and actually be a very serious contender in determining how these technologies can be put to use in the future. So even this context of standard setting, we do not want, I think, whether it's in the WTO or any other international fora, India has been actually has been standing strongly for democratization. And even in the technology sphere, we are actually trying to democratize technologies. It is in this again, in the context of many laterals like Quad, what I personally feel is, I think US needs to go beyond just the signaling aspects of many laterals like Quad and look at actually substantial outcomes, where if US is actually piloting towards Asia, it should result in more technology collaboration, more technology co-production and co-development that are the key words of ICIT actually. And that's when we can actually not fall into the same traps that the WTO has now fallen and create a more polarized world in the technology sphere. So I rest my case here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Kurihara-san, give us your perspective from the finance or investment community, but of course Japan also.
First, thank you, Samir-san, and also thanks for inviting me, ORF as well, our partner. Actually, JBSC is promoting the very first Raishin Japan, Raishin dialogue in Japan next week. I'm back into Japan with ORF, and Dr. Jashika's Sankri also attending the event. And one of the PR agenda is the emerging and critical technologies, as talked here in this dice. And so from first Japan perspective, we have experienced a lot of sort of China threats, the in terms of such sort of concentration of some goods and services, bit of earlier, since 2010s, and we first approached, like other countries, to engage with China to sort of correlate with that country, and we found that we have to diversify that such manufacturing cluster, not only in China, to the other Southeast countries, and finally into other like South Asian countries. And from that context, Japan has established one act, the Security Promotion Act in 2022, May. And under that, we could give more services in the critical sectors like semiconductor. And I would like to focus on semiconductor today. And of course, engaging China is still the very important point, but we need to find another strategy to be more independent and to be more sort of cooperative with other like-minded countries, like Quad countries or other European countries. And we first tried to do the home shoring for the semiconductor sectors, especially very advanced, even 2 nanometers semiconductors cluster within Japan. Getting support from Taiwanese TSMC or some Micron from US, and given a lot of subsidies by ourselves. The Japanese nationals so far we understood the context and not much opposing that sort of huge subsidies. So that would be the one trend even Japan is facing. And as a practitioner, how to realize the another sort of like-minded countries ecosystem establishment, India. India is very partner for Japan and other like-minded countries, Quad partners. We wish that India could establish semiconductor ecosystem, especially power semicon, and supplementing the Japan or US's very high-end semiconductors. We may export such sort of advanced the semiconductors to India. Vice versa, if you, India, could establish good semicon ecosystem of power semiconductor, 15 or 40 sort of nanometers level, then we could also enjoy that sort of semiconductors from India to the Japan or other like-minded countries. So that would be the one concept between Japan, India, semicon supply chain cooperation signed between the IT Ministry of India under Ministry Vaishnav and Japanese METI, Industry of Commerce. So under that, JBIC, Japanese government financial institution, has to support India to establish that ecosystem in India. I came here from 2019, and I found that India has huge potential, good engineers, and good resources, and good relations with Quad countries. So but implementation is the key, and very details will be the key. Finance is the key to really establish the ecosystem in particular countries. So first, finance, subsidies by IT Ministry and the India Semicon Mission is great breakthrough. Like Microns, Japanese companies had approached a lot to this ecosystem. Very recently, congratulations to 3 announcements by IT Ministry. That one is Tata, the fab, the facility in Dorera. Actually, the Dorera is under NICDC, the National Industry Corridor Development Corporations. This is by Japanese government, JBIC, and the DBIT's collaborations since 2014. And so I'm so glad from my perspective as well. And the second one is Tata's, the assembly line in Assam. very important because Japan is focusing on Northeast development. So this is huge developing opportunity for Northeast to enjoy the sort of ecosystem, manufacturing ecosystem, almost first time like this. And the third one is more Japan involved. Renesas invested 7% in that semicon assembly and the testing facility in San Andrew, Gujarat, together with Murugappa Group, CG Power, I think, and Thai company. So the very big announcements would be to be ruralized, implemented. So implementation is very key. So we would like to ruralize from practitioner's perspective. The finance is the key. Not only subsidies enough, you need to bring very important sort of equity financing. I believe that Tata has enough capacity for the equity financing, but they may need to invite other equity partners. So who should be do that? JBIC's established the joint venturing, the fund, public investment fund with NIIF, National Infrastructure Investment Fund, under Indian government and some of the strategic partners. And through that fund, we may support some equity financing for that critical sectors, the challenge from equity perspective. So, and also we have a debt financing, but some might be a bit of optimistic to enjoy debt financing on the project or structured finances basis. I think, from my perspective, I think you should not be such optimistic. For such sort of challenging project, the private financiers not very aggressive to put the debt money into that SPV, special promotion vehicle only. They may need to get some assurance from the sponsoring companies, maybe from Tata or maybe from CG Power, Murugappa Group, maybe from Renesas. So finance, I understand 10 years back, India had some good projects, but failed. I understand some sort of financial issues was there. So Indian government and some related concerned departments should run with that sort of practitioner's perspective to finally enjoy that full sort of finance package. That's my one suggestion. Taking too much time, and but second pillar is whole value chain is important. The project promoters, Tata or Renesas or CG Power are excellent, but you need also find the very good ecosystem partners from material side, the logistics and some testing, the manufacturing facility like Tokyo Electrons or Canon's equipments will be very, very important. But such equipment is too big and also very sensitive. So you need the sort of hundreds of engineers from Japan or from Taiwan or from Thailand for 1 year term. So you would need to prepare the ecosystem of to the living sort of basis or sort of the places and also the environment for such engineers to comfortably settle and put the utmost effort into the project. So ecosystem is very key, another key. I will stop here.
Thank you, Kurihara-san, for two things. One is obviously the extensive Japanese involvement in the Indian ecosystem in terms of development of all these technologies, but also taking out time from your busy schedule, because I know that, as you said, you're traveling to Tokyo tomorrow for the Raizina at Tokyo. I want to come back to Rachel and something that you actually wrote an essay on the critical minerals in the run-up to the Raizina dialogue, where you talked about the importance of the global partnerships. In your remarks, you also alluded to the global south. So can you throw more light in terms of the fact, where is global south in this entire conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I sort of mentioned in my opening remarks, one of the focuses of the Biden administration has been to build more meaningful partnerships with countries in the global south. The fact is that countries that can successfully harness the production of raw materials and the supply chain logistics for those raw materials will lead the world in terms of critical tech in the next century. That means that countries that don't have major natural reserves of these critical raw materials are going to have to build new industrial partnerships with those that do. And that's sort of where the US sees itself at the moment. The problem is how the United States has historically viewed its relationship with the global south, specifically Africa, and sort of how China has seen that as well. So the United States looks at the global south and sees risk, whereas China looks at the global south, specifically Africa, and sees sort of a land of opportunity. The US looks at Africa and sees a development project, whereas China sees and has seen the keys to global economic dominance and has invested in the continent thusly over the last 20 years. So that means that the United States really has to change the way that it thinks about partnerships in the global south. The goal here has to be mutually beneficial, non-extractive partnerships, because at the end of the day, what is it that countries want? They want to move up the global value chain. They want to move up the global economic value chain. And I think that the United States sort of still has somewhat of a backwards approach to countries in the global south. That means, I think, for the US, harnessing and helping to harness private sector finance and helping private finance sort of de-risk itself. And I think in the United States, we have the Development Finance Corporation, but it really hasn't been able to get off the ground, and private investors don't see it as a US entity that is able to really get stuff done. It's sort of understaffed and under-resourced at the moment. So I think the ability for the US to build new partnerships is going to hinge in part on sort of turning that from a development project to a more meaningful partnership building project. But also, I think in the US, you are going to see pushback from certain groups when it comes to helping other countries harness the value of critical raw material supply chains. Just look at the Mineral Security Partnership, for example. You had the Alaska Miners Association come out and speak out against the MSP, saying that it would encourage mining development in other countries, but not in the United States because of various environmental concerns. So this goes back to the earlier point that I made about the sort of differing approach between Republicans and Democrats. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if Donald Trump is elected again in November of this year. But regardless, I do think that building more mutually beneficial and non-extractive partnerships with countries in the global south will be and should be a focus of either U.S. administration.
Thank you. I think that particular nuance about that the US wants to promote the global partnerships, but also some kind of domestic opposition coming in for those initiatives. I think there will be always, any administration or government will have to do that balancing in terms of managing the domestic constituency as well as the allies. I want to come to you, Shweta ma'am, and initially we were talking about the India's expanded global engagement, and you spoke about the ISET. But there are also other initiatives that India is also trying. In fact, you spoke about China, and I remember a few days ago we had hosted the former Bolivian president, Jorge Quiroga, who talked about China's dominance in South America. In fact, Rachel was on the same panel with him at Raisina, and he said that if India thinks strategically, if India gets its act together, it can be the tech leader, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but also in other parts of the world. Can you throw light in terms of what India is doing to leverage these foreign partnerships with like-minded countries, but also what is holding us back? What are the challenges that you foresee as we approach these partnerships?
First, let me put two things here on specifically on critical minerals and resource nationalism. With these new resources, particularly critical minerals, countries which are resource-rich in these critical minerals are finding a new venue for economic development. So now they have the ability to leverage these resources to kind of build partnerships, give a boost to their economy. And it is, in contrast to this, there is this problem of concentration of technologies that can be used to process these minerals. So here the world is kind of in two different zones, where you have one particular set of countries who have the resources which can be used for all the new opportunities that green transition is kind of throwing up to us. And at the other end, we have another set of countries who don't have the natural resources but have technologies to actually process it. And we know that China dominates this field, specifically in terms of technologies to process these rare earths and critical minerals. So in this context, what India sees is that technologies need to be liberalized. So apart from ICET, which actually is focusing on co-production and co-development of high-tech products, be it in the sphere of sectors like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, even space and biotechnology, India is also looking at other partnerships, like exploring partnerships with UK, who has is actually trying to also improve or build upon their technology base. Even ICET has actually been expanded into a trilateral technology dialogue now with US, India, and South Korea. So we are looking at aspects where we can leverage these technologies that these developed countries have already kind of built upon, and then collaborate to see what next generation. So there's a very critical difference here. Like, we just don't talk about critical. That idea of actually adding this word of emerging is very pertinent, because we are looking at future technologies where, when new technologies are being developed, it does not result in concentration in a few specific countries, and gives them a leverage to actually use these technologies to be weaponized and to be used for strategic purposes. So this is where India is trying to look at international collaboration to boost its own domestic capacities, and actually also look at, see, when we are able to actually make a significant presence in the global technology forum only when we have a strong presence in technology ourselves. So that is where we are trying to boost our technological capacities. So the challenges, of course, are how much is our partner countries ready to share technologies with us. ICET has seen some initial green shoots in terms of the GE 414 deal, where the US has actually approved the technology transfer for that deal, for the GE 414 deal. But we are looking to actually see more such deals where both countries can come together, work on new and emerging technologies, invest together jointly in R&D, have a lot of more collaboration among academic institutions, so that we jointly produce new technologies that can be used for the global good and not be used only specifically by individual countries for their own strategic or their own individual purposes. So the challenges is when we have to change mindsets. We cannot be talking with each other, with partner countries, from a mindset of it's just a buyer and seller model. So we need to look beyond that, and we'll have to actually also deal with a lot of, now these technologies come with a lot of regulatory challenges, regulatory barriers. So we'll have to kind of find out pathways to actually address those regulatory challenges, both within our own country as well as in our partner countries, to enable that technology collaboration. So these are some of the few challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurihara-san, sitting where you are as one of the leading financial institution, as also in charge of project financing some of the critical minerals. The point that we discussed earlier, how do you scale up the investments in the R&D of some of these technologies, particularly in the developing economies, and what is JBIC or Japan doing in this particular space?
So in such a ambitious strategic areas, of course we need a lot of risk money for R&Ds or sort of development of 50-50 sort of technologies, possible sort of game changers. So generally speaking, we need sort of several elements from sort of subsidies or grants or the funds by sort of the more giving aid sort of funds to purely for the next 10 decades oriented perspective towards like mid-level mezzanine financing, the sort of debt financing or equity financing from government sides. And of course, we all know that public-private partnership is also critical. We need finally, anyways, private financing due to our limitations of the budget. So for R&D first, the Japanese government is investing a lot in R&D traditionally. And we had fortunately got some Nobel Prizes. This is sort of the culture of innovation for long-term perspective, not short-term perspective. So we have nurtured a lot of sort of academics and also engineers to have some dreams in next 2-3 decades to realize something very new. So such culture is very important, and we may possibly support to the sort of exchange of the such academics or sort of engineers or sort of a system, ecosystem of how to nurture such sort of a long-term perspective oriented educational system. Of course, also in the global, the very harsh competitions, we need to be also short-term perspective, but I think a dual understanding is very important. So our subsidies or our funding should be also be varied, not only for just sort of purely commercial financing, towards more sort of subsidies or long-term perspective funding. So the best mix should be pursued. And for critical minerals, GBIS has a lot of experiences to conduct project financing into the developed countries and developing countries. Even in Madagascar, we financed to the nickel projects for the Sumitomo Corporation's big investments, and in Mozambique, we've financed for some coal projects. We are not doing a lot of coal projects anymore, but we have done. And also in Indonesia, we had financed to some nickel project and some critical mineral projects. So I think India is somewhere very caveat for JBS's financing so far, and we know that in Jammu Kashmir you have a good rich resource in the lithium, and also in Northeast you may have some uranium. And I understand not in China, not like in China, India would need to face some sort of issues how to balance the sort of local demands or local concerns, and also such lucrative opportunities. We have a lot of opportunity to settle such sort of balance between the local and the local governments and central governments, and also private requests in some South Asian countries, and in Vietnam, Indonesia. There were just pretty similar issues, anyways. In most of the democratic countries and open economy countries, of course, NGOs there and the local communities are there. So we would have to support from such sort of perspective, not only with financing, but also the settling of the all related stakeholders. I think that should be the one of the key. And you can count on the JBIC or other multilateral finance institutions for that.
Thank you. We have about 16 minutes left. So let me do one rapid fire round and ask you a question, which is that what one development or trend that you foresee in the next 5 years in this particular space, something which we have not discussed in the last 30 minutes. Start with Rachel.
I guess I'll go back to something that I said in my opening remarks, which was the role of minilaterals in the development of supply chains, critical technologies. And I'm thinking specifically about the Quad here. And I think sort of elevating the Quad in a way that continues on with what we've seen over the last few years with the Biden administration is going to be pretty important. And that means there needs to be definite outcomes, right? Rather than a bunch of, working groups that get bogged down in various local bureaucracies. So being an organization or a partnership that can actually get things done. It's no longer just about getting things across the finish line technically. It's about the real economic heft of the Quad. These 4 countries combined have a GDP of $34 trillion. If you can harness that, I think there will be some major developments there. Things like setting tech standards is a good place to start. Helping to build trade linkages and providing alternatives in the region to Chinese-dominated tech. I think what that means for supply chains is still unknown, but we'll see. Looking at 5 and 6G, developing telecom networks to counter Huawei in things like digitalization, improving flow of data across borders, linking networks for those things like digital payments. So I think the ability to both focus on and harness the power of each of these economies in these mini-lateral frameworks could be a really interesting place to watch over the next few years.
Thank you. Not exactly 30 seconds, but thank you so much for making that point. Shweta ma'am.
Yeah. I definitely am looking at the world being polarized, being caught up in a strategic tech competition between US and China, but India would also have a lot of potential to show the world a middle way in terms of how technologies, these critical and emerging technologies, can be actually harnessed for reaping economic dividends. We have already started leading the way in terms of our digital public infrastructure, where we are using technologies for making huge progress in terms of implementing our schemes, providing technology-enabled gateways for making payments. So, of course, boosted by our technology collaborations with countries like US and minilaterals like the Quad, we can actually become a third pillar for technology.
Thank you. Kurihara-san?
So in addition to the semicons, which we need to focus on to truly establish the ecosystem for the fab in India, I would say the 2 more. The one is battery. The battery is the game changer for next the huge green transitional era. So Quad would do more about the battery ecosystem, maybe in India, and supporting some critical minerals from Australia, some technology support from US and Japan. Japan is now trying to establish some technologies of all solid, the battery technologies, and we may be very pleased to collaborate with other like-minded countries once established. And third pillar is some the medical, like vaccinations for not only for COVID, but also the some dengue or new sort of threats. I think Quad originally came from such sort of medical or sort of disastrous management perspective. And so recently the Japanese Takeda Pharmaceutical announced to support India's biological E for the dengue vaccinations. And so such sort of collaboration is very new for the Quad. But once established such effective collaborations, we can copy that sort of ecosystem, the effective for countries coordination, cooperation into different fields, other medical equipments or medical sources or even API or something. So I think Quad should be much more realistic in the future, I hope.
Thank you so much. Let me open the floor for the audience Q&A. Please identify yourself and identify the panelist whom you want to question. And please be brief in your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for a great session. Harshal Chitale, I'm an economist. Kurihara-san, you mentioned implementation as being very important, so you can have all the good ideas, but you need to make them happen, turn into reality. Shweta ma'am, I had a question for you. Kurihara-san gave some examples of the ecosystem that we might want to develop to make the semiconductor projects a reality and successful. Just from your perspective, what is the status of our efforts on developing this ecosystem?
Thank you. We'll take 2-3 more questions. Sir.
So you mentioned about, my name is Dinanath Kolkar, I represent PIC. You mentioned about a lot of investments and increase in investments in R&D. And all throughout your discussions, I did not necessarily get a feel of what is that quantum. The other thing I just wanted to ask as a question was around climate change. Not once did I hear that there is collaboration happening to address that problem with advanced technology. So I just wanted your remarks.
Thank you. Any other? Mr. Bombawale.
My name is Gautam Bambawale, and my question is to Madam Shweta. I wanted to ask this particular question about the US-India initiative on critical and emerging technologies. And I wanted to ask whether there is an industry outreach aspect of this program. And I ask it because Pune has both industrial and technological competence. So has there been an outreach to particular companies in Pune? And if not, will there be an outreach to companies around the Pune area? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me come back to the panelists. Maybe Shweta ma'am, you want to answer too?
Coming to the question on developing India's ecosystem in semiconductors and how we are going about implementing it. I think we have now just about crossed this hurdle of actually zeroing down on a domestic investor who is now ready and set out to set up a fab and other related semiconductor ecosystem in the country. Our Indian Semiconductor Mission in MIT is now coordinating all these implementation related issues. We're trying to bring in the state governments on board and try to see how we can actually smoothen out the bureaucratic processes for them. So I think that's where we stand today. There's been considerable progress where our Ministry of Information and Electronics and Information Technology has been actually, trying to work on multiple fronts in the semiconductor ecosystem, starting from ATMP to skilling and to actual fabs. So we are kind of having a holistic perspective on let's see what gains we can make in each of the subsectors. And I think that's a very good balance of where we are also being ambitious and also being practical at the same time. So implementation issues will be tackled as and when we get to that stage. But of course, there is an understanding that we'll have to do more than what we have been traditionally been doing. So at least from the Government of India perspective, there is that understanding that we need to do a bit more. Well, also taking a little bit on the question on climate change and technology, I think when we are talking of batteries, when we are talking of lithium, we are talking about critical minerals partnerships. I think the climate change story is in a way interwoven with it. So, of course, I do agree that we have not specifically been concentrating on technologies addressed for climate change. I think, in a lot of these issues, we are looking at it from an economic and a strategic perspective. We know where the economic opportunities lie in terms of electric vehicles or battery systems, energy storage, and these technologies are very much in focus in all our international collaboration and also in terms of domestic efforts like the PLI schemes and all that. As regards industry outreach, our Confederation of Indian Industry has been our face for trying to kind of build bridges for the US industry on ICET. Of course, a very distinguishing feature of ICET, it's just not limited to governments. We are actually envisaging collaboration between government, industry, and academia. In fact, we are actually going out and telling the industry that you tell us what are the areas that you want to collaborate with the US industry, and we will try to facilitate. And I'm sure to take, I assure you I'll take back this message of if we have not engaged the industry in and around Pune enough, we could do that more through CII and its offices here in Pune.
Thank you. In fact, just recently, 2 weeks ago, Delhi hosted the INDUSX, the defense technology collaboration between India and US. I think it's time that we come to Pune for that.
No, I think we need to go. What happens when we start out with initiatives like this, which is led by Government of India, is like most events actually tend to concentrate in Delhi. We'll try to do that because in the last two meetings of our NSAs, the National Security Advisors, the inaugural meeting in Washington, as well as there was a meeting in June of the NSAs in New Delhi, we did have this industry interaction of the NSAs. I think we need to, now go a little more beyond Delhi and start about including different zones of our country and see what comes up from the industry for industry to industry. And I think that alone becomes meaningful to actually enhance our capacities in technology, which industry can benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, you want to address any of the questions, particularly maybe on the clean and green technologies?
Samir, if I could just add a word here in response to what Madam Shweta has been saying. I just spoke to the Vice President of Pune International Center, and we would be happy to host here in Pune the next meeting of the industry outreach of the US ICET program. So if you can keep that in mind and consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of R&D on critical tech, one thing we like to say in the United States is that China has been spending one CHIPS Act per year over the last 10 years on R&D, which of course refers to the $280 billion piece of legislation passed by the Biden administration. The problem in the USA is that, again, as you can tell by my remarks, all of this is focused through the lens of the U.S. geopolitical competition with China, but also the problem in the U.S. and maybe with other countries as well is that we don't have the top people working on R&D in the U.S. government. They're all in the private sector. And so the focus for us, and this has been the focus for us for a long time, is building more meaningful relationships with private companies, and that continues to sort of be the focus. And also, China is just better than we are at investing in talented researchers and making sure that they stay in their country. We're not as good at that in the United States. And in terms of climate change, this is still a super polarized issue in the United States. You can talk about that on one side of the aisle, but you lose the entire second half of the US political class the minute you start framing these conversations through the lens of climate change. We have a long way to go on that front.
In fact, what you said about Chinese investment, I think the fact that when China became the manufacturing hub of the world, I think it also caused deindustrialization in many of the Western economies. And I think it will be some time before these democracies again start rebuilding those capacities. Kurihara-san, you have any of these questions to address in terms of maybe investment and
So regarding not only for quantum computing, but how to nurture the entrepreneurship or the such sort of critical technologies, venture, the private companies, regions is difficult. But for us, I think the Japanese government could not spend on exact sort of venturing projects, and it should be a bit risky. So how government should do is a two-step approach, and we would establish good venture capitalists, venture funding companies, very reliable, credible, and then they sort of more openly, freely to find the such sort of promising the venturing projects or the promising the such sort of entrepreneurs, and then for such critical mineral size, as I said, the project financing should be the key, but the good balance of government and private financing is always issues. So we would like to form more sort of coordinated groups, inviting government sides and private side, and also 1.5, like think tanks or institutions like us, the government-related institutions, to discuss which sort of amount of money would be needed, which sort of the dispute solution system is needed.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be many more questions from the audience, but I think we are running out of time. So, and I cannot really summarize the takeaways from this really rich discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to all our panelists, and I will encourage to continue this conversation over tea break. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a fascinating discussion. Could I request Ambassador Gautam Bambawale to come up onto the stage to felicitate our panelists? Could we start with my far left, which is Rachel Rizzo, Senior Fellow, Europe Centre Atlantic Council, and then Shweta Rao Bantwal, Director, National Security Council Secretariat, and then Kurihara San, New Delhi Representative, Japan Bank for International Cooperation. And last but not least, our chair for the session, Dr. Samir Patil.